Hey, it's Stephen from Dauphin Co-op Building Center here. Today I want to talk to you a little bit about decks. We do a lot of estimates for decks, and we have a couple different ways we can do, and I thought I would take a time to walk you through some of the deck parts and how we do an estimate. We can either do it through some of the software that we have. So we have a software called CellJax where we can kind of put the design in, make a little 3D picture, and it helps estimate the material and show you what it would look like. Or we have our deck guide where we can do it manually. So what I'm going to do in this video, I'm going to walk you through an estimate I did for a 16 by 12 foot deck, and I'll show you all the parts as we go through it. One important note, the City of Dauphin does have a wood deck guide available on their website. It tells you all the specific information you need to know about building the decks, of what's allowed, what's not allowed, what size of joists you need, and all the information. And if you're building a deck in the city, you will also need a permit to do it. So let's get started on the estimate here. Let me show you how we do things when we're doing it manually. So I pre-did it ahead of time just to make sure that we had the information a little bit faster. So when you're starting with your deck estimate, we always start at the bottom first, right? So we'll start with our footings. When it comes to the footings, you got three different options. You have a concrete pile. You can have a concrete pad, so it's just a gravel down first, then a concrete pad where the 4x4 will sit in. Or you can have a screw pile. For this estimate, we're attaching our deck to the house, so we're going to end up using a screw pile. Whenever you attach a deck to the house, you need to have a screw pile or a concrete pile, so that way the deck won't move independently from the way the house is moving. So that way you have a long-lasting deck that's not going to heave on you. It's not going to free float either. So when we're doing our estimate, first we'll look at the width. With the beam that we chose, we can span 8 feet with our screw anchors. So we're 16 feet wide. So every 8 feet we would need one. So 16 divided by 2 gives you 8, plus you add one to start. So that's going to be 3 anchors to support our beam on the deck. Next thing we're going to look at is our posts. So as you can see here, coming up from the footings, there's going to be a post running up to the beam. For that, we're going to use a 4x4x8 post, and they're each going to be about 2 feet up till we hit the beam. So we'll need for each one 2, 4, 6 feet there. Plus we're also going to use some post brace here, the same 4x4s. So we're going to need another few here all together. When we do the calculation out, you need 2 4x4x8s. Once you get the post calculated out, your next item is your beams. For the span that we're using here, because we're doing a 12-foot deck and we're doing 8-foot spacings on our piles, we're going to need to use a 2-ply 2x8 beam. If you refer to the deck guide, it'll actually tell you what you can do. I think you could get away with 2x6 2-ply or 3-ply, but we prefer to make it a little bit stronger so that way it's going to be long lasting. So easy calculation here again, we're 16 foot wide. So for a 2-ply 2x8, we just need 2 16-foot 2x8s. And that's right there all the way across. Next thing we're going to talk about is some of the framing, so some of the joists. So to start off with, we're going to have our ledger board. So that's this board right here, and that's what's going to connect to the house. So that's our first board that we're going to calculate out. Plus on the outside, there's going to be something called a rim board, and that comes all the way along the front. So that's these 2 spots. Easy calculation again, this is a 16-foot wide deck, so we're going to use 1 2x8 16 for the ledger, and 1 2x8 16 for the rim. Once we have that calculated out, we'll do the rest of the joists. So here's your joists. They run from front to back, and that's what supports your decking. So these joists, we got 2x8, we're 12 foot deep, so we're going to use 2x8 by 12s. We're 16 feet wide. So to calculate how many we're going to use, we're going to go 16 inches on center. So we take 16 feet, we times that by 12 to get how many inches in total. We divide that by 16. And that'll give how many joists we need. So that gives you 12 joists, and you need to add 1 to start. So that'll cover all of our joists coming up. So we'll need 13 2x8 joists. Along with the joists, we like to add a little bit of blocking. So right down the center line, usually we'll put a blocking, and also around our 4x4s for our rail posts, what we'll talk about later, we use some blocking as well. So we've added in two 2x8/16s to cover your blocking. Next thing up that we're going to work on is our stairs. So for the stairs, there's a couple different ways to do it. You can use wood stringers, steel stringers, or aluminum stringers. For the wood ones, normally you cut them out yourself, and then that gives you the most flexibility. If you have to change your rise or run, normal steel stringer probably comes with a 7.5-inch rise, but maybe you need a 7 1/4, or maybe you need it slightly bigger. There are limitations of what you need to do. You can also see that in the wood deck guide there from the city. So we're going to do a 4-foot wide step. Doing a calculation, we're going to be about 5 feet out by the time we do our angled run there, and we're going to use 2x10s to build our stringers. So we're about 5 feet out. We're going to use 4 stringers to complete that out, and that'll give us 2 2x10x10s. On the decking side, that's where we'll calculate the treads that are going on top. Next thing out for the estimate is going to be our railing system. Now we're a 36-inch high deck, so we're going to need a railing system. There's a couple different ways to do railings. There's a wood treated, so that's all wood. That's the kind we're going to estimate on here. There's wood with metal, excuse me, wood with metal spindles. That's like, if you look in the background, that's what we have on this deck here. Or there's regal railing, aluminum railing, or different types of glass, whichever suits you best. So for this one, we're going to use 3 2x4s to build our railing. So we're going to have one 2x4 going along the bottom, one 2x4 going along the top, and then another one as your capping. So we take our perimeter. So we got 12 feet here, 12 feet here, 5 feet, 5 feet, and another 12 feet. We take that total, and when we calculate out how many 2x4s we're going to need. So we're going to need 9 2x4 12s altogether. You need 3 here, 3 here, 3 here. And then for the this is 5 feet, so we'd use a 2x4 10. So you need 3 5s here, 3 5s there, and that'd give you into 3 2x4x10s. When we talk about spindles, that's all the little wooden spindles that go up in between those. Those you got to keep spaced so they're less than 4 inches, so that way no children get their head stuck into it or things like that for safety wise. So to calculate that, we take the same total lineal feet on our outside perimeter. Again, we times it by 12 to get the inches, and then we'll divide it by 4.5, and that'll give us how many spindles we'll need. And I'll also subtract our posts in between there, because each post you won't need a spindle. So that worked out to be 105 2x2 by 42-inch spindles. And there also is height requirements on how high your spindles or your guard railing will need to be. So for the posts as well, we're gonna build our posts right into the deck. So that's why we're gonna have that extra blocking, so that way you can secure that down into the deck and then build above that. So we're gonna use 4x4x10s. The reason why we're using 10-footers, that way we can build them down into the deck and secure them and still have at least 4 feet up to work with. And we have 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 9 10. So 5 4x4 10s will cover what you need for there. Now for your decking, so your decking always runs the opposite direction of your joists, and then you screw it down onto your joists that are 16 inches on center. So for your decking, you'll take your total lineal feet since you're 12 feet out here, times that by 12, divide that by 5 3/4, because your deck board is about 5.5 inches, and that gives you an 1/8 to 1/4 inch gap in between each one. Mind you, they will shrink, so just remember, don't gap too big, otherwise you'll have larger holes left for that. And that calculated out to 25 2x6x16s all the way through there. Now for our steps, we're going to need some decking on the steps as well to cover the treads. So usually each tread gets 2 2x6s. That's how they're kind of designed to fit. So to get our 4-foot step, we're going to need 2 2x6x16s. So we've calculated all the lumber that we need to get the deck out. The next thing you got to think about is your connectors and hardwares and surface protection. So for your connectors, we'll start kind of back down to the bottom. When you go from your screw pile up into your 4x4 to your beam, you're going to want something that connects that post to your beam. Two different ways you can do it. You can use these post beam connectors, so they sit on top of the 4x4 and then they screw into your beam. Or another version where they sit outside and you screw that onto your 4x4 and then that onto your beam that runs in the opposite direction right there. Next piece of hardware you're going to look at is your joist hangers. So on your ledger side, you put your joist hangers 16 inches on center, and that's what hangs off your joists to hold up the deck. On the outside ones, we'll use like a concealed flange one, so that way this outside edge doesn't sit past the deck and your finishing. So this one would go on the outside edges, and these are your joist hangers that you put all the way throughout here. Now, very important note, use all the screw holes that they supply for you, and with that you can't use regular deck screws. They have to be a structural screw or a structural nail. Regular deck screws have no shear strength. They're meant to pull stuff down, hold it down, and not have any shear strength on the side. So a common mistake we see is people putting in deck screws in here, and they should be a structural screw. Next item to talk about is going to be our joist to beam connector. So that's these things right here. So what that does is hold your joist on top of your beam, keeps it from twisting and sliding out, and strengths, and makes it your whole deck as one solid unit. Two different ways to do it as well. You can use a rafter tie, so it would go against your beam and screw on or nail onto your joist. Or there's the hurricane tie. So same thing here, that goes against your beam in the bottom part, your joist sits in here, and you connect that all together, and that keeps everything from lifting, from twisting, makes into one solid unit. Now for decking, we did a wood deck here with the ground anchors. You could do it with just concrete footing pads if you're going to keep it floating. The deck that we quoted here altogether works out to be about $2,000 or $2,800. If you were going to use just footing pads and have it floating, if you had a lot lower, you'd eliminate your rail and eliminate these ground anchors, you'd be around $2,000. A couple of the other hardware items you might want to need too. You want some end cuts. Anytime you cut a treated timber or lumber, you want some end cut to put that treatment back on the exposed, so that way it doesn't rot. You'll need some deck screws, usually 3-inch deck screws, to put your decking boards down. 2.5-inch deck screws to screw on your spindles. You'll need some galvanized nails. When you build your beam, you can't use deck screws with that either. Same thing, they don't have the shear strength you need, so you have to use nails or structural screws to put together your beam. A really great screw is the GRK. So GRKs are RRS, are structural screws. You'd use those to install your ledger board onto your house if you're screwing into wood, and then you'd use those to attach in your 4x4. So you put your blocking around your 4x4 for your posts, and you would attach everything with those structural screws to keep that strong and safe. And then like we talked about, the joist screws that would put on all your other items. So this is one version of deck, the wood version. Another thing you could do is also our Trex. So we stock 4 different colors in Trex. Those are the opening price point Trex, so they're very affordable. If you're going to do a Trex decks, I would also suggest maybe putting some joist and beam protector, right? So that way in the water, you'd still use wood for your joist and your beam systems on the Trex deck. But if you want your beam and joist to last as long as your Trex is going to last, then you can use this joist tape that will keep everything going up there for a long time to come. So decks are a great way to extend your living space, have some outdoor space to, have supper with the family, visit with kids, visit with friends. So if anyone needs some help designing or quoting a deck, come on down and see us. We'd be happy to help you out, and we look forward to working with you. Thank you.